Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Ego Chall Podcast, a Call of Duty esports podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we're going to be discussing the announcement of the 2021 Call of Duty League Championship, which will actually have fans. It will be the only and the first and only event of the 2021 season to have fans in attendance. And we are also going to discuss the first week of Stage 5 of the Call of Duty League. Talk about the 10 group play matches that took place this past week. And we're going to give our predictions for Week 2 of Stage 5, which is we're closing in on the end of the regular season for the 2021 season. How are you doing, Bink?
I'm doing all right. We took a little break last week, so I'm happy to be back. Before we get into it, really, I just want to correct what you said. It's going to be the second. Champs is going to be the second event to have fans because Stage 5 Major will have fans too. But, yeah, we can talk about that now.
Yeah, so let's get into the announcement of champs. We, up until, I believe this was last Wednesday, which obviously that's the CDL social team not giving us announcements, not like announcing crap on Tuesdays because they like to announce everything the day after we do this podcast, which is really, really annoying. But anyways, August 19th to August 22nd, the 2021 Call of Duty League Championship will take place. There will be $1.2 million on the line for this event. And the event will actually take place in Los Angeles, California. This is the fifth CDL champs or CWL, COD champs, whatever kind of iteration, but the fifth $1 million event in Call of Duty esports history that will take place in Southern California. It will be at the Galen Center, which I believe is on the campus of USC, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so Champs is coming back. Fans will be in attendance. Tickets go on sale Friday, July 16th, which should be really exciting to, obviously, like you said, Stage 5 Major will actually have fans as well. That will be in Dallas at the Esports Stadium. But this is obviously the biggest event of the year, a huge, hopefully a really fun event, one that won't have as many technical delays as online has given us. What did you think about champs being announced and fans being in attendance for this event?
I was happy we finally got a champs update. It seems like we'd been waiting forever, and we kind of had an idea, just based on when it's always happened in August, that it was going to be sometime around then. But now we know for sure when it's going to be. With the state of the world and everything going on with COVID, I'm not sure if I personally want to go out to California for champs. It's something I'm thinking about though, just because I haven't been to a COD event since champs in 2018 in Columbus with you, so it's been a while, and I've got the itch to go to another event. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I was excited it got announced. I just threw it in our notes for the podcast real quick. I don't know if you want to pull it up on screen, but the big thing out of this announcement that we finally got confirmed was the bracket and the format for champs. And the biggest piece of information that we know now is that obviously only top 8 makes it to champs, and the 7th and 8th seeds will immediately start the tournament in losers bracket. So that makes the battle for the 6th seed in this stage 5, in Stage 5 group play and the major, it makes that battle for the 6th seed much even more important than we had previously discussed. I don't, I can pull up the points and look right now, but I just know off the top of my head when we were last talking about the CDL point standings, we were really focused on the battle for second place because it was super close between like Dallas, Toronto, and New York. But I remember just mentioning that 6, 7, 8, which was Minnesota, LA Thieves, and Florida at the time. That was also like noticeably close too. And now this just makes that battle for the 6th seed that much more important because you don't want to start champs in the losers bracket. We saw last year when they changed the format to allow all the teams in the champs, that the 9th through 12th started in the losers bracket, And, most notably Optic Gaming Los Angeles went on that little bit of a run when, Texas Kenny started and they had that team out there in Texas. But like barring a run like that, you just for such a big tournament, you don't want to only have one series and go home. There's just so much on the line. So
Hmm.
winners bracket is super important. So that was the big takeaway from the announcement for me. Though I was happy, obviously happy we know the dates and everything like that. But I was also extremely excited that we finally got to see what the bracket and format's gonna look like.
Yeah, the dates are also different. Not just like the actual dates, but like how the tournament is set up this year compared to last year. I believe they split it up over 2 weeks, so they did
Yep.
like, whatever the top. I believe it might have been like the top eight, or like not top eight, but like they eliminated like 6 or 8 teams in that first week, and then when they went into the
It was
second
only
week,
it was only top four on the second week, if I
yeah.
remember correctly, because it
So
was Dallas, Atlanta, Optic, and London. And everybody, I remember the big topic was like, how are we gonna practice? Like, only 4 teams actually have to practice, and like I don't know if it actually happened, but I think like Dallas and other teams were offering to pay some of those teams to scrim, even though their season was technically over. So I guess that could be something else we run into this year, but obviously not to the extent, like you said, with it not being over 2 weeks.
yeah, so this year, only the grand final will be played on Sunday, August 22nd, which will be a best of 9, like we've been seeing in these major events. But then we have winners finals, the losers semi, and loser finals on Saturday. So it should be interesting. I think this will feel, maybe unfortunately, it'll feel similar to a major because it won't have that, obviously only 8 teams will make it, which is different from the major where every team in the league can realistically win the event. But because the format is pretty similar to how the 4 majors that we've experienced, and we'll also see a 5th one in about 2 weeks, um, because it's similar to that, it doesn't feel as special. But I don't really know. What do you think of the format here, where you have these top 6 teams um, in the winners bracket and these bottom 2 teams in the losers bracket? I know you said like it's important, but on a personal level, do you like this format where, say, you're the 1 or 2 seed and you only have to win, you don't have to win 8 maps to win championship?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. Obviously, I think it is, similar to the bracket. I think last year the bracket you also had to win 3 series to win the whole thing.
Yeah, it was similar.
It's tough when there's only 12 teams. In the past, we've had these COD champs with 32 teams. You had
Hmm.
the 8 pools, 4 teams per pool, split up into, a 16-team bracket. Like, even just thinking about it from that perspective, the 16-team bracket is more than double the size, or is double the size of this current bracket. More than double for winners bracket alone. But regardless, I think it's tough right now just with only having 12 teams, even though all 12 teams aren't going to be at champs. It's tough to find a format, and that's why we were looking forward to seeing how they would actually pull this off. Because I know you and I just briefly talked about it in a couple podcast episodes. We're like, we don't know what the bracket's going to look at. We don't know how they're going to figure it out.
Hmm.
I think based on the available options, this is all right. I think the only other way they could have done it is if they just did a 14 winners bracket, right? Like 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7,
Yeah.
3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. But that doesn't give that means the only advantage like Atlanta FaZe would have would mean they would just play technically the 8th best team in the league. So then you
Hmm.
get in the argument of, is that really enough advantage for how dominant Atlanta has been? All this blah blah. I don't know. I think it's one of those arguments where you could just run in a circle for days, and there's always going to be someone who's unhappy with it. But based on what we're working with, we'll see how it plays out. I think it's all right for now.
Yeah, I know this format will be disappointing to teams like Seattle or London that were, kind of holding on to hope that they would be invited to champs like they were last year. I know that Octane has been especially vocal about the fact that they are playing these final two majors, and then obviously champs will be on LAN. So you're playing some of these events on LAN, but the majority of the season, the entirety of group play is online, and there's too many differences between them, and that's what he's saying. So I think that's got to be pretty disappointing for all of those teams that were hoping that they would ultimately be able to try to win something at champs, but it doesn't look like that's going to actually happen. I'm kind of happy that we get to see I don't know. I guess this is the format that they had in mind last year, the CDL, because they obviously weren't going to bring the bottom four teams last season. So, I mean, I would imagine that this is the format that they had for the 2020 playoffs, and we're finally getting to see it. We've seen a version of it in the majors this season, which have been obviously more exciting than group play matches, as like literally every esport ever has figured out that a bracket is usually much more entertaining than round robin play and group play. So hopefully this will be really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just looking forward kind of to this season to pick up, because we did hit a lull there where the matches felt kind of because we figured out where the top 6 teams are usually, and we figure out who the bottom 4 teams are. So it's really just been about is Optic able to beat Subliners, is Dallas able to beat Toronto, that kind of stuff. And we'll actually get to see some big stakes. This is $1.2 million. There's been $500,000 at every major, so this is life-changing money for a lot of these players. Winning this event is obviously huge. We've seen in the past, like Simp buying a house, and Clayster, and like all of these guys that are Crimsix flaunting his Porsche or whatever. These guys, this is life-changing, even if they've won it before. So it's obviously going to be a really big event. I'm looking forward to it. We have a little bit to wait. Obviously we have more than a month to wait until this event, but at least we have some Call of Duty action before then.
Yeah, and just on your Octane point real quick, I think for those bottom teams, like obviously the season didn't go the way then they were hoping, and they ran into their struggles, but I think the silver lining here is, even if they're not at champs, like they just have to be looking towards the future and like thinking, they're after this last week that we're going to recap, there's only potentially only 2 more weeks of online Call of Duty. Like once you get through the Stage 5 major and champs, you think next year, if everything's going all right with COVID and the pandemic's under control, we could see the transition to leaving online play and going back to LAN full time. Obviously, that's just speculation, but you got to think that's at least a conversation. So for some of these teams that are like saying, stuff like you said, where teams being upset they might not get to play at champs or not play on LAN as much as other teams, like gotta just weather the storm and hold out hope for the future.
Well, that's part of the reason that I'm wearing my Gorillas t-shirt today, because this is one of the last episodes that we'll be discussing them in this current iteration, because they are definitely, I can't say definitely because I don't want to come off too strong, and then I don't know if it's even possible at the moment, but I'm sure it's technically possible. It's very likely not going to happen, but this Gorillas team is closing in on the end of it. These guys probably, I would imagine none of these players will be on the Gorillas starting roster next season, because it's been a really turbulent year. So, I mean, maybe I'll wear this when they are inevitably eliminated from contention, and then we'll eulogize them and send them off into the sunset as we focus on the top 8 teams. So we'll get there, though. We have some matches to break down this week. We had 10 matches. If you've listened to the podcast before, when we recap these, we're just focusing on like the biggest points. We're not going to break down matches like I don't know, like the Atlanta FaZe coaching staff will. We're just hitting the main points and getting through these matches, and then we'll also give our predictions for next week's matches. So let's talk about the first day. We had two matches that really nobody probably was very interested in. We had Atlanta FaZe versus London Royal Ravens and Optic Chicago versus Paris Legion. Obviously, two of these teams have really big fan bases, and the other two teams are not going to champs most likely. So it's like not a big thing. Both of the favorites, FaZe and Optic, won 3-0. Did anything in these two matches stick out to you, Bink?
I think it was pretty convincing on both ends. 3-0s, like you said, we did get to see standoff played, and both of these series could be a case where, assuming the vetoes went with, Atlanta having the higher seed and Optic having the higher seed, that would mean they most likely got to pick the second map. So they probably picked standoff, trying to, play it and expand their map pool a little bit, because I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was only played 4 times at the Stage 4 major. It was played, obviously, in Stage 4 group play after it was added, but only 4 times at the actual major, I believe. Might be wrong on the exact number, but I just know, I was expecting to see it more at the major, and it didn't happen. So now that we're back in group play, it seems like these teams are, working on some stuff still and trying out the map. So that was obviously, as an S&D guy, as myself, I like to see standoff played more. Nothing really else stood out to me, to be honest, though. All the KDs for Atlanta's match were pretty good. Paul X had a 1.06, is the only positive player on London. Simp had the highest KD in the series with a 1.40. And then when we look at the Chicago and Paris series, similar. Envoy had a 1.00, got 51 and 51. Everybody else was over that, and everybody was negative on Paris. Temp had the highest with a 0.98. So pretty straightforward matches for that first day of Stage 5 group play.
And then we had two matches on Friday, Minnesota versus LAG. Minnesota ended up winning. This was notably Mental, his debut for the Gorillas. He previously played for LAG Academy. He replaced Cheen in the starting lineup. We talked about it on a previous podcast episode. So the Rocker win that 3-1. Mental doesn't have a great debut, but LAG just hasn't had a real great season, so that's not too surprising that he struggled as well. And then in a really, really close game, I actually did catch the very end of this one. Subliners and the Los Angeles Thieves. The Thieves win 3-2. Subliners almost pulled off the reverse sweep. This was, I believe, John's debut in the Call of Duty League. So two debuts on Friday, and one rookie, he got the win, and the other actual rookie did not get the win. What do you think of these two matches?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right there on the head. That was my big focus heading into Friday. Obviously, those Thursday matches were lopsided on paper, so I personally wasn't expecting anything crazy to happen on Thursday, but going into Friday, I was excited to see Mental's debut and, John's CDL debut / return to being in the pros after his hiatus. Obviously, like you mentioned, Mental didn't have the best debut in this series for the Gorillas. He had a 0.53 overall KD, which was the lowest in this matchup. He went 31 and 58. All 4 players on Minnesota were positive, and all 4 of them were over a 1.2 KD as well. The Gorillas did win map 1, Garrison Hardpoint, 250 to 197, but after that, Minnesota just won the next 3, including a 250 to 61 stomping on Checkmate Hardpoint in map 4. So obviously that probably played a little bit into the lopsided KDs, but yeah, that's all eyes were on Mental heading into this. We mentioned it before. This was kind of like a 1.5 person change is how I've been referring to it previously, just because similar to what we've seen when Standy joined Minnesota, which Standy joined Minnesota to allow Priesta to also change to an AR role. We saw something similar here with the Gorillas, where Mental joins the Gorillas, and Silly is allowed to go back to that flex AR role, where he saw some earlier success earlier in the season when the QBZ was being used. Obviously, it didn't work out in this series, but that's the mindset behind the change. And also, the Gorillas also put out a interesting. It was like a 10-minute video I watched on YouTube about like Mental and like the thought process behind bringing him in. It had some interesting points in there, and it was similar to some of the stuff we brought up, where it's giving him a shot to see what he's capable of, and obviously we're not going to judge him off just 1 week in the CDL, but it's a work in progress. The guy's been a super successful Gears player, so he obviously has talent when it comes to shooters. Just gonna have to see if he's able to translate his skills to the professional level of Call of Duty. Are you muted?
I wanted to mute because I have a lot of background noise. But yeah, I was just saying that I think that it's good to put someone in when the season is essentially chalked and you're not going to really get anything out of it in the end. You just want to kind of see what he's got. As for this Thieves Subliner series, I showed it on the screen a little bit ago of the Draza clutch where he kills, I believe it was Asim, who is trying to defuse the bomb in round 10 of Miami Search to clutch up. So I think the Thieves, they showed something. Obviously, winning a series, within a week or so of putting together this roster. It's obviously whatever their like 8th or 9th roster change this season, but if they can find success with this team and really get some momentum going heading into champs, then more power to them. But yeah, LAG, I hate talking about them now. They're dead to me essentially. So let's get on to Saturday's matches.
Whoa.
What?
I didn't get to talk about New York LA Thieves.
Oh, I didn't know if you had any thoughts, to be honest, because I just.
No, I mean, it's all right. I don't have anything particular to say. The only thing I was going to point out was we can talk about it later, too, with New York's second match of the week, but we do have to bring up again, this was technically, Asim's return, however you want to put it, coming back from his visa issues or whatever. New York had to briefly play with Decimate at that Stage 4 major. And obviously New York's been a strong team since bringing Hydra in Stage 3. They got second at Stage 3 major. Then they played well in Stage 4 group play, ran into these visa issues where Asim wasn't able to play in the LAN, and now he's being reinserted back in the lineup. And we brought it up. I think they mentioned it on the flank, and we brought it up on this last episode of the pod too, that it was possible New York might struggle just because they have to get back into the groove of things with playing with Asim again, and it looks like that's something that could actually be happening with the team right now. And I also just wanted to point out that like you said, it was New York coming close to the reverse sweep, but I thought it was interesting too that the Thieves' first two maps, they won the hardpoint and search both on Moscow, and New York won the control and hardpoint both on Garrison. So I thought that was interesting. We've also talked about New York's success in hardpoint in the past, so it was slightly interesting to see the Thieves steal that game one against them. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Just want to throw that in.
On Saturday, we had 3 matches: Atlanta FaZe versus Paris Legion, which was other than a pretty close hard point, a very convincing win by Atlanta, unsurprisingly. And then we had the Florida Mutineers versus Seattle Surge and Dallas Empire versus Los Angeles Guerrillas. The favorites in both of those matches won as well. Florida 3-1 over Seattle, and Dallas swept LAG, which makes LAG a 0-2 team this week. I don't know where you want to start. I guess the most interesting match of it is Florida versus Seattle, because there was actually not a sweep in that, and Seattle, they keep winning control, which is interesting. And I mean, it's becoming less relevant as they keep losing, and they don't, they're probably not going to qualify for champs, but it's still interesting, I guess. So, what do you think of these three series on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much we have to say about the Atlanta Paris series. That was kind of a stomp. Uh, the hard point, Garrison hard point was close. It was 250 to 204, but then Miami Search was 6-0 and Raid Control was 3-0. I'm looking for my screenshot. I took it because they showed it on broadcast and I can't find where I put it. I didn't bookmark it, but they brought something up on broadcast before this matchup where they were basically saying like Miami Search had been FaZe's like auto veto for the last 2 months, and they played it in the series. And then whatever the hard point was for map 4, I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I want to say it was Checkmate. Obviously, it doesn't matter because it wasn't played. But whatever it was, that was like another map they've been constantly vetoing. So that was basically like proof that we're getting like, Atlanta is trying these maps out that they haven't been playing, trying to improve their map pool heading into Stage 5 Major and Champs. Obviously, they already have the first seed locked up regardless of what happens. So that was just interesting for me to see. And obviously, it didn't really matter if Miami Search was their auto veto because they still got a 6-0 win on it. But yeah, do you have anything you want to throw in for that one?
No, I'm actually trying to find what map it was. I'm looking on Kai Gamepedia just because they obviously tweeted out. So I think I went too far. Yeah, I went too far. I'll find it eventually, but no, I don't really have any.
It was Checkmate.
Okay.
It was the keys to victory before the series. It was tie up any loose ends on your weaker map. FaZe has banned Miami Search and Destroy for 2 straight months. They chose it for map 2. Checkmate Hardpoint has been their primary ban. They chose it for map 4. So basically just confirmation that FaZe is trying out some of these maps and trying to improve the map pool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's really all they need to keep working on is be ready for really anything when it comes to Major 5 is important because you don't want to completely have an off event right before you go into the championship event. But champs is the big key here. They have to be ready. They only have to likely prepare for a few teams. Obviously if they win, they'll only be playing 3 teams or whatever, or 2 teams in that entire tournament. So they don't have to prepare for every single team, but they do have to prepare themselves for all these different maps. I know that the subliners beat Optic earlier in the season when the subliners pulled out maps that Optic and New York had not really played to that point, and that helped New York.
Stage 1 Major.
Yeah, it helped them, just kind of surprised them. They had obviously practiced them and gotten some strategies down, but FaZe can't afford that kind of lapse because it would be really, really disappointing for them to dominate the season like they had and to not come away with the championship like last season. So I think it's a good mindset to have. They've seemed to have this mindset for months now, but it's very important, at least at the very end of the season, to be prepared for whatever comes next. Let's move on to, unless you have any other thoughts on these other Saturday matches, do you want to just move on to these final 3 Sunday matches?
Oh, well, I can touch on the Saturday matches real quick.
Right.
You kind of already brought it up for Florida and Seattle. That the only map that Seattle actually won was the Control, a little bit different from what we've seen in the past. The Moscow Search was close. It was 6-5, came down to round 11. I actually don't remember. I remember what I was doing during that search, but I remember watching round 11, and I can't remember what happened exactly. Regardless, and Florida also won both hard points with the search. Obviously, got that 3-1 win. Looking at the stats, shockingly, Awakening had the lowest KD. Florida with a 0.89, but Skies picked up the slack with a 1.52. Neptune had a 1.13, and then this was, one of the things we were talking about heading into this stage for Seattle was that, obviously they're down at the bottom of the standings. It's going to be unlikely for them to pull anything off, but they did have that, brief run at the Stage 4 Major on land. So the question was, are they going to be able to, use that kind of short burst of minimal success and turn it into momentum for the transition back to online play? And it didn't really work out for them. Octane did have a 1.21 KD in this series, but his other three teammates were negative. And then obviously for the Dallas series, the big takeaway for me was this was like our first time obviously seeing Dallas back in action again since their success of Lane, pushing FaZe to 9 maps in that Stage 4 Major. Another question similar to what we saw with Seattle, but to a different extent in the storyline. How was Dallas going to be able to take that success from LAN and carry it into online play? And they picked up right where they left off with another dominant 3-0 here. It was another lopsided search. I know we just talked about the Gorillas, so the Gorillas lost the check me hard point to Minnesota 250-61, and then the next hard point they play in the league is Garrison hardpoint against Dallas, and they lose it 250-64. So 2 back-to-back 100-point clubs for the Gorillas. And then, the standoff search was 6-2 and raid control was 3-0. Notably, Mental had a little bit of a better series here, just statistically, with a 0.74. I don't think he actually had that many more kills, though. I think that he just had less deaths. So he went 31-58 in the first series against Minnesota. Then he goes 34-46 in this series against Dallas. But it was a lopsided series. So all the players on the Gorillas had negative KDs. He actually had the second best KD on the Gorillas. Silly had first with a 0.81. Then it was Mental. Then Assault had a 0.62 and Apathy with Assault had a 0.67. Apathy had a 0.62, whereas Vivid had a 1.61. So I guess this was another slight revenge game for Vivid, even though they have already played since Vivid got traded from the Gorillas to Dallas. But big takeaway for me for this one was we saw Dallas picking up where they left off at the Major.
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on the Dallas LAG game, but for Seattle, Florida, this is really a match that Seattle had to win because, I mean, even just
all their matches are.
And especially against Florida, because Florida is one of those teams that hasn't locked in a spot. And there is the ability to realistically or theoretically, not realistically because it's very unrealistic, but theoretically to go on this run through group play and go on a run at the Major and just knock off one of those final 3 teams, whether it be the Thieves or Florida or Minnesota. So this kind of match is obviously not what you want as a Seattle fan, and we're just getting closer and closer to mathematical elimination for this team, which is kind of unfortunate because although I had to completely roast them for like 85% of this season because they couldn't win a control and they couldn't win a match, it still kind of sucks because they have shown some glimpses and shown potential over the last, I'd say, month, pretty much since Classic came into this team, and whatever happened, in this team, whether it was just a chemistry issue or, Classic just being like the classic glue guy, essentially. But yeah, it's disappointing that they're not able to pull this off and even make it kind of interesting at the end of the season, because other than just seeding between teams that, now that we know that the top 6 start in the winners bracket at Champs, it's not as interesting, I guess, when it comes to seeding. So it's not as important. And I was hoping that Seattle, because I didn't have a lot of faith in any of the other bottom 4 teams, but I was hoping that Seattle would end up being the team to come out of the bottom and hopefully just give somebody a run, but it doesn't look like that's actually going to be the case here.
Yeah.
And then to wrap up this week, we have 3 matches, the Thieves versus the Royal Ravens, Ultra versus Rocker, and Optic Chicago versus the New York Subliners. the final match is the most important one, Optic versus Subliners, and it's pretty surprising, pretty interesting how this one went. Optic, they win 3-0 over the Subliners, and these two teams have played several times throughout the season, and usually in pretty tough spots, whether it was very important for group seeding or it's in the major. And the Subliners just didn't look like themselves. I was able to catch this game, and I was just like, is this the New York team that I saw throughout stage 4 and saw throughout stage 3? They just don't look the same. What do you think it's the ASIM like reintegrating into this team? Why would Optic be able to control this series like they did?
I think that's the biggest thing for me is just, uh, New York is gonna have to. Yeah, I put down the notes here. It feels like a reverse honeymoon. That we mentioned in COD that teams that make new rosters often go through honeymoon phases where they see immediate bursts of success. It feels like in this case that New York is trying to readjust to playing with ASIM again. It shouldn't be like a drastic change or anything. Like it's not like they had to play months without ASIM, right? It was literally
Yeah.
just one major. What was it? Did they lose? They lost both matches. No, they beat Florida, so they played 3 matches. They went 1-2 with the major, I think.
Mhm.
So they literally only played a couple days with Decimate or whatever the exact number is. So it shouldn't be like a drastic transition period or anything, but it looks like, just based on these first 2 matches with New York, it's gonna take some time from them to get back to where they were at the end of stage 3 and stage 4 group play. I'm not sure exactly, what in particular they have to improve or anything like that. I mean, just looking at the numbers, it looks like Optic showed up to play. Everybody on Optic was positive and everybody on New York was negative from a KD standpoint. So that's just something we haven't seen from New York. When New York was succeeding with this Hydra iteration of the lineup, they were seeing a lot of success in hardpoint. Optic takes the Moscow hardpoint in this one, 250 to 200. And that's just something we're gonna have to keep our eyes on throughout stage 5. I still think New York is a really good team. To answer the question that you have in the title of the broadcast, are the Subliners chalked? I'm gonna go with no. They absolutely aren't chalked. It's gonna take time though. It feels like I don't know what the answer is, but they played the Thieves and Optic now, which means there are 3 matches remaining against FaZe. Obviously, that's going to be a tough one. But then they have Paris and London remaining. So those other 2 matches, if New York loses those matches against Paris and London, then we might have to take a step back and really look at what's going on with them. But I'm expecting New York to figure it out, and they should be able to get back to their success if everything works out the way obviously they envision it too.
Yeah, and these other 2 matches on Sunday, Thieves versus Ravens, Los Angeles wins 3-1. So with John, the Thieves are 2-0, and
Yep.
Toronto, they end up winning 3-1 over Minnesota, despite Minnesota winning the opening hardpoint. What stuck out to you in these 2 series?
Though for Toronto, Minnesota, I feel like I would have to go back and look at through all the results for Toronto to see the exact number, but I feel like this is just like uh, one of many times where Toronto has lost the first map of the series and then just won the next 3. It feels like whether it's in a system or what. It's just something I feel like I've seen multiple times from Toronto. The thing that sticks out to me is when they won the Stage 2 major, and they did that on that Sunday where they played 3 straight series, and the first 2 before the best of 9, they lost the first map, won the next 3, then they went into the next series, lost the first map, won the next 3, and then they went in. to the best of 9 and beat Atlanta. So I don't know the exact number of times, but it feels like I've seen this a bunch of times. And it's not like they got smoked in the map one either. It was 250 to 225, so it was a close map. And then after that, Toronto just had control. Both hard points were close, so that's something good for Minnesota. The Garrison hard point to end it was 250, 215. But yeah, that's just the big takeaway from that series was I just feel like I've seen this formula before from Toronto. And then for the Thieves in London, London won the search. Was a little surprised by that just because we saw, if I'm not mistaken, the Thieves won both searches against the Subliners. So the new lineup for the Thieves, this was their first loss in the search. They're 2-1 with this iteration. But yeah, other than that, they won both hard points. So, I'm not getting too excited about this Thieves lineup personally, just because similar to the extent I'm not overreacting to the Subliners starting 0-2. I'm not going to overreact to the Thieves starting 2-0. It's only 1 week of online group play matches. It's gonna keep waiting to see what we get from both of those teams.
Let's talk about these next 10 matches. Obviously, because these bottom 4 teams aren't winning, it's not that interesting when it comes down to seeding. But to start off the week, we have 2 matches. So this is Thursday, July 15th. Toronto Ultra versus Los Angeles Guerrillas, and Minnesota versus Seattle. I think it's obvious who we should pick in both of these matches. But what do you think?
I'm going with Toronto, really, in Minnesota over Seattle.
Yeah, I think I would be stunned if LAG ended up winning. I could see Seattle beating Minnesota. Like, that one is not nearly as shocking, but I don't see it happening either. It's just not going to happen, most likely. And even if it does, it's like, what is the significance of this? I guess the significance would be, Minnesota, their seed at champs for them it is an important match because they are still vying for 6th. So that's really the storyline going into this is, can Minnesota just get to the 6th seed? Because Florida and LAT, they both won their matches in week 1. Minnesota obviously lost to Toronto, so they need these wins to kind of keep pace with these other teams, but I just don't see Seattle really making it that interesting. But they proved me wrong before. They beat Optic, which was fun. But Friday, July 16th, we have Dallas Empire versus Florida Mutineers and Atlanta FaZe versus the Los Angeles Thieves. Both of them pretty interesting matchups. We actually have some good teams involved. FaZe and Thieves, they're undefeated in their group. If the Thieves end up winning this, who knows what the potential is for this team. So what do you think of Dallas, Florida, and Atlanta, LAT?
I think this should be a case where Dallas and FaZe take both of these, but like you said, I'm going to be excited to see both of these matches. It's 4 teams that, in all likelihood, will be at champs at the end of the season. So, I'm excited about that. Just based off the form we've seen from Dallas, and most recently at the major, and we only saw them play the Gorillas, but that was a convincing victory. So I just feel like I have to go with Dallas for that one, and then I'm not picking against FaZe. They haven't had any reason to. The only way I see the Thieves taking this one is if, like we've mentioned, FaZe continues to work on their map pool, and just because the Thieves are a newer team, they might not know exactly what their map pool is, so there could be something finicky in the veto systems, and Thieves are able to steal a map or something, or obviously steal 3 maps to get the win, but yeah, I'm going with FaZe. I guess it's possible the Thieves pull it off, but I don't think it'll happen.
I agree with you. I think Dallas and FaZe are the favorites here. Who knows what Florida brings to the table? They surprise us at various points during the season, and they have the ability to win this kind of matchup. Thieves, less likely because it is FaZe. Even in group play, they are, usually really focused. I don't know what their group play record is, but I mean, despite trying out maps all the time, they don't lose very many. They've lost single-handed matches this season, so it just doesn't seem very likely that they'll lose this. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how this new LAT roster kind of matches up against an elite team in phase. Let's move on to Saturday, July 17th. We have 3 matches: New York versus London, Florida versus LAG, and Toronto versus Seattle. I mean, I think before New York's 2 losses, this would be. I think it's still. You shouldn't pick London. Like, if you bet on these matches, you should still go with New York, despite how they played in week 1. But I guess it's more interesting because New York is struggling. But yeah, I don't think this is a particularly interesting day of matches. What do you think about these?
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, on paper, these are 3 straightforward matches. I'm gonna go with New York over London, Florida over LAG, and Toronto over Seattle. But like you just mentioned, I'm gonna still have my eyes on that New York London match. Just because New York has to produce. So if they lose that series, we're gonna start having to ask some questions and figure out what's going on with them. Now that I'm actually seeing this schedule for next week, and obviously New York only plays once, and then I just mentioned that New York has to play London, Paris, and Atlanta. So that means next week they'll play Paris and Atlanta, and just based off what I'm assuming, obviously, I mean, actually, the CDL did tweet all the graphics. What I'm trying to say is I'm assuming New York versus Atlanta is gonna be one of the last matches.
Oh, it is.
And it's the second to last match on the final Sunday of online group play. So that means we're gonna get to see New York play London and Paris before they have one of those other, one of the tough matches against Atlanta. So if they got some kinks to work out, get rid of the rust from having to deal with the ASIM switch, whatever, this is the time to do it. So we're going to have to see them produce against London. But yeah, other than that, I think New York, Florida, Toronto here.
Yeah, really no difference there. This is what happens. This happened last season as well, where you went into the final few events or the final few weeks of the season, and you just have like uninteresting matchups where most of these, they matter in terms of seeding, obviously, but there's no real shot at any of these bottom 4 teams making it out. So it's not as enticing as if if London, Seattle, LAG, and Paris were all on the brink. They were right there with Florida and Minnesota and LAT, and you have 6-7 teams fighting for 3 spots. Like that would be really interesting, but that's just not reality here. So yeah, I'll go with New York, Florida, and Toronto here on Saturday. And then on Sunday we have some interesting matchups. LAT versus Paris. So I guess we'll most likely see LAT coming off a loss, how they rebound. If not, LAT could stretch to 4-0 in group play if they end up upsetting FaZe. And then we'll see FaZe versus Optic, which is it's shocking that this is not the last match of the entire week, considering this is like the biggest match in Call of Duty esports. And Dallas versus Minnesota to cap off week 2. What do you think of these 3 matches?
This isn't the first time we've seen this, and I know you brought it up the last time it happened too. Most notably, though, this is technically the Minnesota home series, so it makes a little more sense to have Minnesota as the last match here. I still agree with you, though. But again, this entire week of matchups, I don't expect anything too wild to happen, which, just because we're saying that, we could see a bunch of upsets this week, so who knows. But I'm going with Thieves over Paris, FaZe over Optic, and Dallas over the Rocker. Notably, that this will be the only time we see Optic play this week, so they're going to have time to prepare for FaZe, and they're obviously coming off their 3-0 win over New York. So this could be closer than some of the more recent matchups we've seen between Optic and Atlanta. Obviously, to kick off the season, they had that really close series that went down. It was a 3-2 win for Atlanta, where Atlanta just smoked them in the searches. But other than that, I don't think there have been any other like super close series between Atlanta and Optic. So this could be an interesting one from that perspective. Still not picking against FaZe though, because like we just mentioned, they've literally lost 4 series all year. And then Dallas versus Rocker for me. That's been an interesting matchup all season. Rocker had the upper hand early, pulling off upsets against Dallas. And now I think most recently Dallas has kind of flipped the script on that. And, just like I said, for Dallas over Florida, based off of what we've seen recently from Dallas, I'm not picking against them either at this point. So that's kind of 2 tough matches for, Dallas this week compared to some of these other like matchups that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
They got to play two teams that are going to be a champs. So it'll be a good test for them to see if they're going to be able to continue, build that momentum, build their case for that second seed at champs. But yeah, I'm going with Thieves, FaZe, and Dallas for Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see. I guess I could see Dallas losing, but I don't think Minnesota is the Minnesota that we've seen at various points during the season. That I mean, I guess Minnesota has been a tough matchup for Dallas throughout the season, but these are 2 really completely different rosters from those previous matchups. So I don't expect this to be continuing a trend or anything. The one thing I'm kind of surprised about is FaZe and Optic don't have a nickname for their match, because we obviously have E Clasico between Envy and Empire and Optic, and we dubbed HBR Classic for Thieves versus Optic, but you would think that FaZe versus Optic, which was a big rivalry in like AW when those teams were maybe at their peaks, and it just seems weird that the 2 biggest brands in Call of Duty esports history that have like this really like long history together, that they don't have a nickname for their match. I think that's weird. I don't know why that is.
Seems like something we're gonna have to try to rectify.
Yeah,
take matters into our own hands.
I have no idea what it would
anything
be.
off the top of my head.
Yeah, me neither. I
try to think of something.
I mean, I want to think of something sniper related because of the sniping clan crap that started off, but I mean, we have really nothing else to talk about with these matches, so I thought maybe changing the kind of the focus of what we're talking about would be helpful, but maybe we'll figure it out when we get the champs or in the off season. We'll brainstorm some ideas for what these series should be called. Do you want to talk about any of this other stuff before we get out of here? The Season 4 Reloaded mid-season update coming out on Thursday. I mean, you play COD, I don't, so are you excited or interested in any of the stuff that's coming in the update?
Yeah, so I was just going to bring it up just in case, we're running out of stuff to talk about, but that is happening on Thursday, the Season 4 Reloaded update, like Preston said. The big thing for me personally is we're getting our first round-based zombies map in a couple months, so I'm really excited to play the new zombies map. Looking forward to that, but I don't think there's going to be any major competitive changes in this Season 4 Reloaded update. Before I say that, though, CDL Intel did say that I believe it was from the patch notes or something that Treyarch put out earlier today, was that the iron sights on the XM4, QBZ, the Krig, and the FFAR have been pushed out, or they're getting updated in the update. Obviously, the only gun that we see really used in competitive is the Krig, but I don't think I've seen anybody not use a red dot on the Krig this year. So I don't believe this update will have any, effect on the competitive meta before champs or anything like that. The map coming in for multiplayer is Rush, which was a paintball map that was a DLC map in Black Ops 2. I doubt it's added to competitive map pool or anything like that. So, yeah, just it's a fun casual update. Just wanted to bring it up for any of the people watching who, like myself, if anybody likes zombies, looking forward to it from that perspective. But yeah, other than that, the only other thing that I was gonna mention was I saw Abizi put out his first ever YouTube video earlier this week, which is really good. It's something we've talked about previously on the podcast, and it's something that has been talked about, for years in the Call of Duty community. Is just some people, the wow, I just started bad there. The debate, the debate between whether pro players should create content on the side or how they balance competing and creating content. That's just always something that's been debated. And I think it's personally good to see Abizi trying to, start putting out content. We obviously have guys like Attach. Octane has been doing a good job of the Sims trying to put out content too. So, and obviously Scump is the king of that and always will be. So, I think it's just good to see Abizi putting out that first YouTube video, potentially starting that up. But most notably, the thing that stuck out the most was it was just a quick Q&A video, and he was asked what he would want his team to be if it wasn't any of his current players on the Atlanta FaZe right now. And he said his team would be Shotzi as his sub duo, and then Dashy is kind of like that flex AR with Octane at the main AR. And I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that team in particular. Obviously, I put down here the question, is that better than Atlanta FaZe? And I'm going to say no, just because Atlanta FaZe is nasty right now. Again, 32-4 record on the year. So I think it's going to be hard to find any combination of a team that's actually better than the FaZe. But it was just something interesting, I thought. So if you have any thoughts, go for it.
I was just kind of interested that you didn't name Doug Sensor Martin as one of those players that does YouTube on the side as well, because, I mean, he's a YouTuber, much more than a professional Call of Duty player in the recent history. So, but yeah, that is obviously not as good or better than FaZe. At least on paper, because you never know how players will interact with each other. But I mean, I would say that it'd be really, like, for every sub in Call of Duty esports or in the Call of Duty League, if you saw Shotzi and Abizi running at you, you're absolutely just like shitting your pants probably, because that's terrifying to think about. And Octane and obviously Dashy to round out that roster is pretty sick. I'd like to see what other players think. I know that different players have different perspectives. They won't pick the typical best players. They'll pick guys that they know that they can play with or that complement their skill set. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'd like to see some other players do it. And about the YouTube thing, I think if you can handle it, I think as a professional player, I think you're doing yourself a service. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not doing YouTube. If you can't handle it though, if you can't handle the entertainment side as well as the competitive side, obviously you have to sacrifice the entertainment side to compete. But if you find yourself having a bunch of time where you can create videos and you want to have like an avenue after your career and you don't really know what that's going to entail, I think that content creation is a really a good idea. Look at Nadeshot. Nadeshot owns one of the most successful esports organizations in the entire world. I mean, obviously he's an enigma. There aren't very many Nadeshots in the world, but even if you're Octane, who has made a really solid following on YouTube just over the past year, 2 years, I think there is a lot of benefits to doing that. It is effort that some players can't or won't put in. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate that we don't get to see more of that. I always wanted Aches to become a YouTuber because he is a very, very interesting guy. He has unique takes on nearly everything in Call of Duty esports, so I think he could really do well, but I think he's living his best life with his I think he has like a GTR or something like that, and he's doing stocks or something now. So he went the big timer route, not the scump or nade shot route.
He hasn't actually retired yet, so who knows? Maybe he'll come back.
Yeah, he's on that Doug Spencer Martin retirement where they're hanging around, but are they really?
No, I think for me though, like you kind of said, I think it's really tough, and I give the players who were able to pull it off a lot of credit. With the schedule for a pro player, you gotta, especially in today's day and age, it used to be harder back in the day when it wasn't as organized as it feels like it is now. But like you got your hours of scrims a day. And then it used to be, like after that, you're playing your eights or you're going over VODs and stuff like that. So it was tough to find time for, at least for someone. I don't want to sound like, I have experience with this, but from the outside looking in, it's definitely, it's got to be tough to find time to, try and throw in some of this YouTube stuff. So I give these guys a lot of credit who are able to pull it off. But the big thing for me, like you said, is just it sets you up for success afterwards. Like you're only going to be able to compete for so long, even if you are as good as guys like Simpin and Beezy. Like you're only going to be able to compete for X amount of years. We're not going to see Simpin and Beezy competing when they're 60. I don't think. If we do and they're still winning, that's going to be hilarious. But it's most likely not going to happen. So to try and take those steps to set yourself up for future success, I just think it's a really smart move, and it's good to see. I think Call of Duty will be in a better spot overall if more pros are able to find that balance and dedicate some time to doing content creation while seeing success competing. But as I say that, I'm going to look it up just because, we don't necessarily have a ton of stuff else to talk about. Saying that Abizi needs to, set himself up. Obviously, I wasn't just saying Abizi. I'm talking in generalities. But with Abizi, I mean, you can make the argument he doesn't necessarily have to. He's already the ninth. In terms of earnings, he's earned the ninth most of any Call of Duty player at $623,000. Simps right behind him in 11th at $607,000. So I mean, they got money in the bank. But yeah, that's just something I think is worth looking into for the success of the Call of Duty League and Call of Duty Esports long term. If these guys are able to successfully create content on YouTube or stream stuff like that, it could get more people interested in watching competitive Call of Duty. Building their fan base, build up fan base of the league, kind of win-win situation if they're able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's like you said, they probably won't need to as far as the money is concerned in the short to medium term, because I don't know if it's very likely, but it's pretty likely that Simp and Abizi and those kind of guys are going to be the guys that have the most earnings in Call of Duty history eventually. Because you would imagine someone like Crim6 or Clayster, they're going to retire in the next few years. And I'm not saying that they will, but the prevailing thought is that they won't be here by 2030. They won't be playing in the Call of Duty League when they're pushing 40 years old. I'd love to be proven wrong, and they could be one of the first Call of Duty pros to do that, but I think it's very likely that they won't be doing that. And Simp and Abizi are younger than me and will be about Clayster's age, or I guess a little bit older than Clayster is right now, if they play for another 10 years. And if CDL POTS prize pools are as big as they are now and they continue to grow with franchising, we could see Simp and Abizi, buying Corvettes and Porsches and Teslas and everything under the sun, because they just won a bunch of events and they became millionaires based off of just their play. But I think that guys like that who are obviously really talented, they have the advantage, even if they don't have the most entertaining personalities, which I would say there are not a lot of CDL players that have, or I would say that there are some CDL players who just won't be entertainers. They don't have that kind of personality. And I don't really know, I haven't watched Simp, or I haven't interacted with Simp or Abizi all that much, so I can't say definitively for them. But if you do have the opportunity to become an entertainer, I can guarantee that it's going to be less stressful for you than competing at the highest level of Call of Duty for the next 10 years. I don't know if that's the route they want to go to, or if they just want to kind of do this as a side hustle. But I mean, I always go back to Sensor, because Sensor is he's not an especially talented Call of Duty player. I know he's a national champion, but he's not he's not a 2-time world champion. He's not Clayster, a 3-time world champion, or JCap, who has had all of this success for years and years, and they've created a name for themselves as a winner. Sensor is essentially a guy that at one time was at the top, but hasn't been for a very, very long time. And he still made a killing on YouTube and Twitch and whatever else he does, because he pivoted. He went that entertainment route, and he became a really big personality. People outside of Call of Duty esports know him. My girlfriend, who has watched very little Call of Duty esports, knew who he was. I mean, obviously she followed FaZe a little bit, but to be able to recognize one person who you really don't really know, but you kind of do know, that's kind of interesting. It's similar to Nadeshot or Scump. If you show a person off the street, like, there might be a chance that they know them, but they just know them from YouTube, which is obviously a much bigger audience than just CDL. So I think, like you said, if a player or multiple players, they take advantage of it and they begin doing YouTube and streaming on Twitch a lot, maybe they'll become like Doublelift, who outgrows just being a player, and they can transition to being a personality and help their esport grow.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point too. Like when you bring up the comparisons between like Simp and Abizi and Crim and Clay, just names aside, the prize pools are so much bigger now than they were years before. Who's to say it doesn't continue in that trend where we get to a point where youngest Jim Jr. is competing in $30 million COD events? He could win like one event and be like a top 10 COD player in COD history.
He won't need the money
though. Jokes aside, though, I mean that's something to think about too. Is just like if the prize pools continue to expand, we get to a point where even guys like Simp and Abizi, they continue to see the success, but these younger players who come in, immediately, similar to what Simp and Abizi did, other guys come in immediately with these super large prize pools. They can eclipse some of these other guys who competed, in the infancy of COD esports, and really had to grind to even get to a point like before this was a franchise league where players were literally playing for tournament winnings to pay rent and stuff like that. Now we're far beyond that point, but it's just something interesting to think about.
Well, if you think about it, Clayster, I believe he claims to be the highest earning MW2 player in the scene, and he made, I think, like around $50,000 for an entire year of playing. And obviously that's like PCL and like whatever other tournaments there were. And I know that Burnsoff, he lived off the legacy of being a GameStop 25K champion for a long time. So like those things don't happen anymore, I don't think. Well, GameStop's not really a thing other than like meme stocks essentially, and people don't go to GameStop to buy games anymore most of the time. So I don't know if they're having a bunch of $25,000 tournaments anymore. But that kind of stuff is, really foreign. Like when Burnsoff won his $25,000 at GameStop, Simp was peeing the bed in elementary school. So I think we are very far away from that kind of time, and you never know. Obviously the CEO has a lot of room to grow, and it has to grow for the this to become reality where, youngest Jim the third, he's got a $20 million grand prize winning or whatever. Because if you look at traditional sports, the sports salaries did not just grow like overnight. It wasn't just okay, you like Wayne Gretzky gets paid $1 million a year to like Connor McDavid gets paid $12 million a year. That didn't happen overnight. That took 30, 40 years.
Yep.
So it's gonna take a long time, and the complaints that the fans have and the players have and whoever else, the complaints they have about the CDL, they're gonna have to be addressed for that to happen, and I hope that they all do get addressed, and I can retire at 55 after going to my 45th COD champs or whatever, and just have I mean, the math doesn't check out there, but I go to a lot of COD champs. I don't do much other than co-host the Ego Chall podcast with my senior citizen friend, Justin Binkowski.
Wow.
I mean,
right.
If I'm 55, you're going to be like 80, 81, 82 or something like that.
That's not how that works.
But maybe we can have that reality where we're sitting on the beach like on our own island because we made a killing on Call of Duty. Maybe that'll happen.
Oh man, I guess that'd be something. But you did bring up a good point there, real quick too. I guess if we see continued increase in salaries for pro players, that brings up the question: is would prize pools even increase at that point if the players are making so much money? So I guess that's something else we'll have to keep an eye on down the road, assuming we continue to see the CDL till you're 55.
Yeah, I don't know what the future looks like for esports because I don't think traditional sports had prize pools attached to them at really any point. Yeah. So we're in a completely different space here, and maybe it won't continue. Maybe salaries will be kind of on the lower end because you have the ability for like essentially a performance bonus. So maybe that'll be the future of esports. We'll see. And last before we get out of here, so Salvation Elite, they leaked some details some alleged details about Call of Duty Vanguard, which is reportedly the next Call of Duty title. And so this is according to @Intel Call of Duty. They just kind of summarized. He said one, gameplay is similar to Modern Warfare, like the movement and gunplay. UI, color, overall vibe of the game similar to Cold War. Tactical sprint is back, and slide cancel, field upgrades, and gunsmith are all returning. I guess, what do you think about if that is true? If all of those details are correct about Vanguard, what do you think about what the next game would look like and how you would enjoy it?
It would be tough. I mean, I think the similar to MW statement is a big turnoff for a lot of people. Although I actually had some fun playing competitive GBs with Trem and MW. I know he didn't like it as much as I certainly did, but it's just MW wasn't a popular game, and there were a lot of issues with it, and just hearing that the next game could potentially be similar to that is certainly like an eye-opener. Obviously, we won't know for sure. We don't even know if Vanguard is actually the name of the new COD. You've had nothing officially confirmed about it. This is all just speculation and leaks at this point. So I personally am going to hold out until we get some, more concrete information on it. But it's we're getting to that point. It's kind of crazy to think about, but Cold War season's almost over, and we're almost getting to that point where the next COD should come out. The big thing for me when I saw that leak was I saw a lot of people saying that they wanted to see the return of jetpacks, and I don't know about all that. I've heard this before, and before this tweet, I saw some people saying it, especially guys like Mike and Nick in our friend group saying the return of AW2. Like, I don't know, when jetpacks were a thing in COD, people were like, oh my God, what the heck? Get me back the boots on the ground. Then we got back the boots on the ground, and everyone's thrilled. And now all of a sudden it seems like people are like, oh my God, no, boots on the ground, get me back the jetpacks. It's like, what are we doing here? That's not Call of Duty to me. I'll always die on that hill. It's just, I'll be happy if we keep boots on the ground forever. Might be wrong. People are going to disagree with me on that, whatever. But I was just super surprised to see, the amount of people who were like, wow, we want, jetpacks back. I was like, wow. I was mind blown. But the other thing, I don't remember when it was. I'm scrolling through Crone's Twitter account right now. But it was with, I'm pretty sure he was the one who posted it. It was with Scump, though. And he was just talking about the next game. I'm not going to be able to find it, am I? I feel like it wasn't that long ago.
Oh, was it the league play
but
thing?
It was something where he was talking to, okay, here it is. It was from July 2nd. I had to scroll a little bit. Where he was he just said that he wants to see like a trailer or gameplay of the next COD before he signs a contract to compete in 2022. And I mean that's kind of like a little shocking. I mean, shocking might not be the right word. Obviously, if he's not going to enjoy the game, he has the ability to not compete and be, financially set with it. It would be a big blow to competitive Call of Duty, obviously, if he hung it up. But that was just something that I was kind of surprised to see, and we're gonna have to keep an eye out for that trailer to see, how legit these leaks are, I guess, or what kind of reception the next game gets.
Yeah, I think it sucks, obviously, like because I mean, I don't know how much viewership Scump himself brings to the table, because we don't have, like, that's impossible to figure out until he's gone, essentially. But he's the biggest name in Call of Duty esports. He's on the biggest team in Call of Duty esports, and it just I think from, like, the blame needs to be put on the developers and the publishers to say, all right, you're, like, whether you like it or not, whether you cater to the competitive aspect of this community or not, there are millions and millions and millions of dollars being poured into the competitive side of Call of Duty. The Call of Duty League has a reported $20 to $30 million buy-in for a franchise. These are billionaires buying in the hope, or they feel maybe the certainty that they will eventually make that money back and more. You don't buy into a professional sports league to be out of it in 5 years. That's not how things work. You buy it because it's supposed to make money by itself. Jimmy Haslam didn't buy the Cleveland Browns for $1 billion to sell it 5 years later. He bought it because his kids, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren can own that team and make millions, maybe billions of dollars, over their lifetimes. So I think that the developers and publishers need to be blamed if, like, a karma situation happens again where he is so unhappy with the state of the game that he is willing to retire, to give it all up, to just go spend time with his family and be a content creator and occasionally help out with coaching. And if Scum does the same, who can really blame him? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell a millionaire you should do this because it helps Call of Duty viewership. Because I'm not gonna. I don't play COD because I don't really enjoy it to the same effect that I used to, and I'm not gonna tell Scump that he should play it as, like, much more than I would, and play it on a competitive level, and stress and worry about everything about the team aspect of it. And I know he's talked about how he's had to kind of sacrifice sponsorships and partnerships in the past because he's kind of been allegedly blocked by the league in some way with sponsorships about that. So I think I can't tell him to stick it out, and I completely understand if he doesn't end up re-signing a deal with Optic or continuing on in the CDL because the game isn't fun.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway, regardless of what happens in the future, I think the big takeaway from that is that this could be a turning point for Call of Duty. We're in July now, based on a fall release. We're just a couple months away from the new game, and the community wants to see what this next game is going to be like. And uh, you know, I don't remember what trailer. Maybe it was the Infinite Warfare trailer. That was like one of the most disliked videos ever, something
Yeah, I
like
think so.
that. But you know, could be wrong there. But regardless, my point here is that the trailer, the gameplay review for this upcoming game, whatever it's called, whether it's Vanguard or not, it's going to be important. It could be a massive moment that has major implications for the future of not only the Call of Duty franchise, but competitive Call of Duty and everything around it.
Yep. That's all that we have for this week. This was a pretty good episode. We obviously took
Yeah.
last week off, and we don't expect to be taking any more off until the end of the season. I guess we'll just play it by ear. But make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like the video and subscribe and share the video to your friends and family. And subscribe or follow the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever you're listening on. Make sure to give us 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at JBink with 2Ks, at PresBuyers, and at Ego Chall Podcast. The next show will be on Tuesday, July 20th. If there are any changes to the schedule, make sure to follow our Twitters, and specifically the Ego Chall Podcast one. We'll update you there if there are any changes. So that's all I have for you. Bink, take it away.
Yep. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back here most likely next week to recap the matches that we give our predictions for this week, and then we'll have our predictions for what is certainly the final week of online Call of Duty in 2021, potentially the final week of online Call of Duty action again for the foreseeable future. We don't know about that, but exciting times here with champs and Stage 5 Major coming right around the corner. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and as always, remember to send the chow.